Bob Collymore was brought up in Babris in Guyana. We call him as Bob. A lively and charming young boy, he often ran circles around his grandmother, who looked after him in his early years once his mother left to go to the United Kingdom to pursue work opportunities. Growing up amongst the fragrant flora of Guyana, Bob's deepest and earliest memory was a strict discipline his grandmother instilled in him. He watched as she invited other children, to share the food at home, often questioning why other children were eating family's food. Her answer, and indeed her philosophy, became his guiding principle to always ensure that everyone had a seat at the table, even if that means having half portions, so that there is enough for everyone. When the time came to join his mother in the United Kingdom, Bob left at the prospect of moving to a new country to explore the breadth of a new experience. He was initially unprepared for the reality of being one of the only black boys in his school, but quickly discovered that his quick wit, innate sense of mischief, and cheery humor gave him an edge. And someone who viewed the world through an inventive lens, Bob quickly discovered art as an outlet, and for most of his teenage years, he imagined an idyllic future where he could live off the creations. And when time came for university, he suffered his first significant setback. He was offered a place at the Warwick University, but had to turn it down because he was not eligible for funding. It was in that moment that he learned that he had to adapt if he wanted to create more opportunities for himself. While initially he thought this setback would mean that he could fully imagine a future of traveling and being an artist, that dream ended abruptly when his mother gave him an ultimatum at the age of 18. Get a job or find a new home. Not taking any chances, she secured an interview for him and made sure he showed up. And there began Bob's accidental journey into the world of telecoms.
And we agreed that whoever survived the other would read this poem at his funeral. I'm genuinely sad and heartbroken to be the one reading this poem today. It's called My Funeral. Forgive me for the words. I hope I can trust you, friends, not to use our relationship as an excuse for an unsolicited ego trip. I have seen enough of them at funerals, and they make me cross. At this one, though deceased, I am to be the boss. If you ask to talk about me for 5 minutes, please do not go on for 8. There is a strict timetable at the crematorium, and nobody wants to be late. If invited to read a poem, just read the bloody poem. If requested to sing a song, just sing it as suggested, and don't say anything. Though I will not be there, glancing pointedly at my watch and fixing the speaker with a malevolent stare, remember that this is how I always reacted when I felt that somebody's speech, sermon, or poetry reading was becoming too protracted. Yes, I was impatient and intolerant and not always polite. And if there aren't many people at my funeral, it will serve me right. Sure, that's not what happened. As always, between Bob and I will ignore his instructions of just read the bloody poem and say a few more words. He will probably be upset, but he would do the same to me. Much has already been said about Bob, and much more will be said here today. I have, even with his encouragement, started writing my book about my life and Safaricom, and have so far written only one chapter. I called it Chapter 33, and I called it Bob. One day you may read it. But what I would like to say here today in the presence of all of you is that Bob was the bravest man I ever met. He faced the indignities of months of injections, blood transfusions, chemotherapy, constant tests and examinations, pain, and in the end, death, with an enormous sense of humor and resilience. I'm sure many of you knew that about him. He was so considerate and concerned about his family, his team, and even his doctors. He did not want anyone to worry about him. He wanted to worry about everybody else. Over the last 15 years, I went from being amused by this white man in a black body, pretending to be a very serious corporate person, to really becoming a serious corporate leader, to the only man whom I loved. And desperately wanted to live forever. Excuse me. But somehow, God had other plans. Farewell, my friend, and God rest your soul. Thank you. Thank you.
I walked up to him and asked if he lives in a cave or something, because I could not find him on any social media platform. He gave me his contacts, and this is how we started our father-daughter relationship. In one of our first conversations, he said, "The joy of knowing children like you and all the wonderful children at the Academy is immeasurable." On 18th June 2017, during Father's Day, I wrote to him and told him that when my friends were talking about their dads, the first person that came to my mind was him. My last message to him is that you may not be here anymore, but my love for you will never die. I miss you, Dad. Your legacy lives on, and may your soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
But Bob was more than a business leader. He was a friend. Once in a lifetime cometh a man who against all expectations wins and succeeds so wildly that his friends, his family, and a whole nation has to celebrate him. When I first met Bob Collymore, he had 2 strikes against him. The first one was he had to fill the shoes of the phenomenal, visionary, committed, fiery, blunt Michael Joseph. Who could? The second strike against him, I'd rather not talk about, but you know it. But Bob did not fill the shoes of his friend Michael. He made his own shoes. He wove the shoes, he handmade them with his relentless commitment to work. But more than that was his commitment to excellence.
Bob often said he was interested in numbers, but this belies the truth being that he understood business very well. It was because he truly believed that people meant more than profit, that purpose, people and profit did not have to be mutually exclusive. We have all seen how well he steered Safaricom, and the board and shareholders were more than impressed with his performance. We particularly appreciate the efforts he made to continue giving leadership to the company, even when his body was severely ravaged by disease.
You may have in the recent past read or heard about the Boys Club. These were no boys, but some old men. In fact, the youngest was Jeff Koinange. So you can imagine how old the others were. But there were about 10 or so who Bob brought together and hosted every Tuesday whenever possible. Many are with us this morning, some have traveled from far and wide. Only on very rare occasions and following extreme persuasion did Bob allow a few members to host the Boys Club outside his home. Our get-togethers were full of laughter, and during one such get-together, the name Kihara was given to him. When we next visited his house, Wamboi had put a name up on the signpost showing their way to their home. He drew us into many projects which he was supporting, like the Josephine Kulea initiative to protect young girls in Samburu, and the Ice Bucket Challenge, he dutifully invited us to the annual Safaricom Jazz Festival. Bob had many other personal interests. He was a helicopter pilot. He encouraged me to learn how to fly one and discreetly followed up with a training captain on my progress. At one boys' club get-together, he teased me about my first solo flight on my own. We flew together a couple of times. He was a serious pilot and would warn me not to crack any jokes, otherwise would end up going down. Bob loved music. He liked playing instruments and was a keen supporter of local musicians. He challenged me to take up the sax, and we planned a collab at a surprise during one of the jazz festivals. I learned how to play the sax, but unfortunately the collabo was not to be. Maybe when we meet again, we'll do it. He was a hilarious man. When any of the boys met him in London, he insisted on introducing them to his tailor, a certain Ghanaian called Boateng. I vividly remember one occasion when he was fitting a new suit, and he asked his tailor to sell the rest of our suits. The price was beyond our budgets. So we politely told the tailor that we would return at a later time. Bob did not comment. On our way to dinner that evening, we stopped at a car showroom where I showed him what I thought was a nice car. That is when he vented his frustration at our not buying suits from his favorite tailor, quipping that the car was worth an awful lot of suits. The next morning in his humor, he M-Pesa'd me 1,000 shillings as a startup fund for buying the car. On another occasion at some European capital, we got together for drinks with a bunch of friends. At the entrance where we were gathering, we were asked for what was by any standard an excessive cover charge. He made us live in a half, saying that he was not going to pay a cover charge 4 times the cost of drinks that we were going to take. From October 2017, when he was diagnosed with AML, we made it our duty to visit him wherever he was. Whether it was at Nairobi Hospital, Guy's Hospital, near Russell Square, or Euston in London. When he eventually came home, the boys' club took up the responsibility, together with Wamboi's friends, and a group that Wamboi formed, known as Healers Group, to donate platelets that is so much needed. Jeff Koinange became Mr. Platelets because of his high count, until the baton of donating the platelets was passed to our children, and Jeff lost the title. Bob was brave to the end. It was not his wish for us to grieve. Tuesday last week, Bob invited us for a regular boys' club meeting. He was relaxed and was joyful. And so we were taken aback when he broke the sad news that he had only a couple of weeks at best to live. He walked us through his journey and assured us that he was at peace. He eventually went into his whiskey store and opened a very special reserve blended whiskey that he had saved many years for a special guest. He insisted we become the special guest. And he insisted that we all share the whiskey, even for those who don't drink whiskey. Then he saw us. He saw everyone of us off individually. Little did we know it would be the last boys' club meeting with him. We did not want to leave the next visit for Tuesday this week. And so we insisted and agreed to meet him on Friday for tea last week. He later cancelled Friday because he was tired. On Saturday morning, we all woke up to a pleasant surprise. He had asked us for tea at 3 p.m. He was jovial albeit in some pain. He told us what he wanted for his final journey and requested us, through one of the boys, Bharat, to oversee the cremation. Many of the members of the Boys Club traveled out of the country after the Saturday meeting. We still believed we had some time with him. On Monday, we all woke up at various destinations to the shocking news of his demise. We remain grateful to Patrick Kwaku, who responded to Wamboi's call at 3 in the morning and quickly got the message to the rest of us. I had just gotten to the DRC on Sunday night and woke up to find Wamboi's attempted call to me. Joshua Igara was in New York. Lamin had just gone back to Nigeria. We all turned back immediately to fulfill his wishes. We owed this march to a man we recognized as our captain. On Saturday, while we were there, and I think it's only fair that I say this, while he was taking us through, he also took us through two of his visitors last week. To Michael Joseph, Bob was overwhelmed by your emotions when you visited him on Wednesday. He reminded us of a similar scene in London a year ago when the two of you had gone out for dinner and you came back and you couldn't leave each other's hands. And I saw the difficulties you were. He had similar difficulties on his emotions about you. To His Excellency the President, he was very clear you visited him on Monday just to see how he was doing, but he felt you gave him an opportunity to explain what he was going through and how many days he had. He remained very grateful.
Bob liked to quote His Excellency John Mahama, who once told him of power and succession that one must leave when the applause is loudest. Bob left when the applause was loudest. There is a man I would like to thank for reminding me in the midst of my grief that Bob was a different sort of person. On Tuesday, as our convoy made its way to Kariokor for Bob's cremation, an elderly gentleman in a bright orange jacket stood on the side of the road, raised his right arm in the air in salute. As our convoy slowed down, he shouted, "Bob, we love you. You have done well. Go well, Bob."
Bob Collymore. And indeed, it is a celebration of a life very well lived. But it is difficult to reconcile Bob Collymore, who we all knew had this terminal condition and that he had not long to live. But when you met Bob Collymore, he behaved, he interacted as though he was going to live forever. It was quite a paradox. And it goes to demonstrate his courage and what he stood and lived for.
When I was preparing to come to Kenya earlier this week, and I heard the news of Bob's passing, I immediately wrote a letter to Wambumi, and my office said to me, "So who was this person?" He was the head of a telecom company. And I said, yes, he was. He was the head of a telecom company. And he was a great head of a telecom company. But much more important, he was a great human being and a wonderful example of how a good life can be led. So what I remember about Bob from my conversations with him, oh, one other thing, by the way, I I know that tailor the man spoke about. I actually did have a conversation with Bob once about that tailor. I know that tailor. I use that tailor. He's a great tailor. But my wife, who is a believer in equality, is still buying clothes on the basis of that tailor's suits. So Bob was someone who was a great leader. And he was a great leader because he was unafraid to take positions, unafraid to stand up for what he believed, but also because he was an effective man. He got things done. He knew what his challenges were, he set out to meet them, and he met them.
There's 3 things I can say Bob loved. A 4th one I can also say, but I don't want to mention that here. Amongst many other things. But I am certain Bob loved Kenya. He loved it as his home country. Bob loved Safaricom as if it was his own, a part of his family. And Bob loved his wife and his children dearly. Like I said, the 4th one I won't mention, but some of you here know what it is. About 3 weeks ago, I was on a trip to Canada. Time differences and everything. So at some strange hour, consistent, I said, for 2 days in a row, 2 o'clock in the morning, registered, called Bob Collymore. I was wondering. So on the second day, I picked it up and I'm asking him, Bob, why are you calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning? He says, I didn't realize you were traveling. So I said, yeah, I am, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning where I am, so can I call you when I get back? And he said, no, I've got something quite urgent I want to discuss with you, but I suppose I can wait until you get back. But I just wanted to tell you, I made you a promise that I'd hang on for another year with the company, but I think I'm going to break that promise. So I told him why. I said, we'll talk about it when you get back. I started asking myself a couple of questions and says, but please don't tell anybody what I've just said. We'll talk about it when you're back. So I get back. I give him a call. You're back. I said, yeah. So I went over to the house. Found him there, calm. How's everything? Everything's fine. But like I said, I'm going to have to break my promise. And he's saying it with a smile on his face. So I thought, Wambui is put you under pressure, Because he kept telling me, I don't think Wambui will allow me. But so I said, she succeeded, right? He says, no, it's not quite that. But I don't think I have more than a couple of weeks to go. So I said, but you've still a lot of things that we can try and do. How can we? He said, no, I've given up. I've tried everything. And I have accepted that my time has come. So we spent a whole afternoon. And my biggest thing was, why are you talking to me about Safaricom, what about you? I says, no, my chapter is closed. And I have accepted it. So all I want to know is, how is the future of this company? What is its future? What's going to happen? And we spent almost 3-4 hours talking about nothing else but what he saw as his vision, his hope for the company, his dreams and what he thought I should be focused on in terms of my own legacy as President of the Republic, the focus on the the focus on corruption, and a fight that must be won, the issue of how do we deal with the moral fabric of our society that has collapsed. You know, at the end of the day, I said, Bob, are you sure you want to continue? He said, no. If you're not in a rush, I'm not in a rush. Let's continue. And we had a wonderful, wonderful afternoon together. And when we finished, I asked him, so what can I do for you? You can't do anything for me. I don't need anything. I've sorted out my life. I've sorted out my issues. But the only thing you can do for me is make sure that you all take care of Wambui and the kids. That's all I want. I'm not interested in anything else. Well, we're here, and it's finally happened. I've lost a very good friend. My one disappointment, I was supposed to have gone back to collect something that had been reserved for a special friend. So Peter, Kenneth, Aigara, and crew, you have to pay. That didn't belong to you. But say that we have lost a great friend, a champion for Kenya, a champion for young people, a champion for the arts. May the Almighty God rest his soul in eternal peace. Thank you very much.